everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a pair of beaded fringe earrings. These are what the ones I'm going to be making in the video will look like at the end. These are the supplies you're going to need: beads, scissors, a lighter, Fireline, and Nymo bead thread. All of these supplies are in the description below. First, we're going to start by taking a piece of Fireline and cutting off about 1 arm's length of thread. Then you're going to thread one end onto your needle and pull out about a 6-inch length of tail. You do not want to make a knot in your thread or double it, just leave about a 6-inch piece of tail. Once you've got your needle threaded, you're going to hold your needle in your dominant hand and hold the end of your thread with the tail in your non-dominant hand at the end. So your non-dominant hand is holding the end of the thread and your dominant hand is holding your needle. Now we're going to start by picking up 4 beads of the outer color. In this project that I'm doing, my outer color is blue. You can pick any color you want, but the outer color that I'm going to be talking about is blue. The inner color is gold, and the middle color is gold, and the inner color is white. So if I'm referring to blue, that's the outer color, and whichever color you want to use is fine. So you're going to pick up 4 beads and bring them to your left hand all the way at the end and have them rest on the top of your finger. Then you're going to thread your needle up through the first 2 beads, like this. So you're going up from the bottom and pulling it all the way snug. And as you can see, I'm pulling the tail down in my left hand to make like a little square with my beads. Then you're going to go down through the next 2 beads from the top. So the tail, as you can see, is facing the bottom on the left side. You have to make sure your tail is always at the bottom of your project. You don't want to be rotating your project at any point in time, because otherwise you're going to be all mixed up. So you pull your thread from the top to the bottom and pull it snug. Now I'm going back up the first 2 beads from the bottom on the left side and pulling my thread snug. And again, I'm going to go down the second set of beads from the top to the bottom and pulling it snug. Now you're going to pick up 2 gold beads, which is the next row, and you're going to go from the top to the bottom in that second column of beads. So from the top to the bottom in the second column of blue beads, and you're going to pull it snug. Then you're going to go up from the bottom in those gold beads, and again pull your thread snug. Now we're going to pick up 2 white beads, and then we're going to go up through the gold beads from the bottom to the top, pulling it snug, and then going down the white beads from the top to the bottom. Sorry, I had to make my camera focus here. So we're going to go from the top to the bottom and pulling your thread snug. Again, we're going to pick up 2 gold beads. And you're going to go from the top to the bottom of those white beads, pulling it snug. Then you're going to go up through the gold beads from the bottom, pulling it snug. Now you're going to pick up 2 blue beads, going from the bottom to the top in the gold beads, pulling it snug. And you're going to go down from the top to the bottom of the blue beads, pulling it snug. You're now going to pick up 2 more blue beads and you're going to go from the top to the bottom and pulling it snug. And then you're going to go back up from the bottom to the top of those last 2 beads. So ending this row, your thread will be on the top on the right and your tail is at the bottom on the left. Now you're going to pick up 4 beads, and this part is where we're going to be building up our next row. So you're going to take your 4 beads and you're going to go in between the gold and blue columns underneath the little thread bridge. So here I'm trying to show you a close-up. In between the gold and blue beads at the top, there's a little thread bridge. Oops, I dropped my project. There's a little thread bridge from the stitches that we made earlier. And you want to make sure that you thread your needle underneath that bridge. That's how your beads will stay together, by being underneath that thread. From here, you're going to go up through the 2 beads on the right, making sure that your needle stays in front of that thread bridge, because if you go underneath it again, you're not going to catch your beads on the bridge and it's going to come apart. So you're going up through the bottom to the top of the 2 beads on the left, pulling it snug, and then you're going to go down from the top to the bottom of the 2 beads on the right, and you're going to again pull your thread snug, again making sure that your needle is in front of those beads in that bridge that I was just talking about. And then one more time, you're going to go up from the bottom of the 2 beads on the left, again in front of that bridge. You're going to go up from the top to the bottom and you're going to pull your thread snug. Now we're going to add another column of beads. So we're going to be taking 2 gold beads and we're going to repeat the same process. So again, going underneath that next bridge and coming back up from the bottom to the top of those 2 beads you just picked up, making sure to stay in front of that bridge. So because we're skipping 1 column of beads, I'm picking up 2 more gold beads and doing the same thing underneath the next bridge from the back to the front, and then up through those 2 beads from the bottom to the top, and again pulling my thread snug. Now I'm picking up the last 2 beads. Sorry, those are not the last 2 beads. Another set of beads, these ones are blue, from the back to the front, underneath the bridge, going up from the bottom to the top in those same beads that I just picked up, staying in front of that bridge. I was struggling here a little bit, don't mind me. So again, from the bottom to the top, pulling your thread snug. Now we're picking up the last column of beads for this row, so 2 blue, and again from the back to the front, underneath the bridge, pulling your thread snug, and you're going from the bottom to the top in those 2 beads that you just picked up. So I picked up 4 blue beads, and underneath the second bridge, so between the blue and the gold beads from the previous row, I'm going from the back to the front, and then up the second column of beads on the right, up from the bottom to the top, and then I'm going from the top to the bottom into the first row on the left, pulling it snug, and then again up from the bottom to the top in that row on the right column. Sorry, I mix up row and column a lot, please excuse me over here. Now I'm picking up 2 gold beads, again underneath the second bridge from the back to the front, and we're going to pull that thread snug, and then you're going to go from the bottom to the top in those same 2 beads that you just picked up. from the bottom to the top into those same 2 beads that you picked up, and pull your thread snug. So the last 2 beads for this row are blue, from the back to the front, underneath that last bridge, up from the bottom to the top in those last 2 beads, and pull your thread snug. Starting on the next row, I picked up 4 blue beads underneath the second bridge, and again from the bottom to the top of those, just that second column of beads on the left, up from the bottom to the top, now down from the top to the bottom in that first column of beads on the right, pull it snug, and then again one more time, up from the bottom to the top in the column of beads on the left, pulling your thread snug. So now we're moving on to the next column, and we're skipping gold in this row with the pattern that we're doing. So we're picking up 2 blue beads, back to front underneath the second bridge, up from the bottom to the top in those same beads that you picked up, and pull your thread snug. Now for the last column in this row, again 2 blue beads, going in underneath that last bridge from the back to the front, and up from the bottom to the top in those same 2 blue beads. Now we're starting on to the next row. So I'm picking up 4 blue beads in underneath that second bridge from the back to the front, going up from the bottom to the top into the 2 beads on the right side. So again from the bottom to the top into the 2 beads on the right side, pulling it snug, and then you're going down from the top to the bottom into the 2 beads on the left side, and then one more time up from the bottom to the top in the 2 beads on the right side. Now you're going to pick up 2 more beads underneath that last bridge, pull it snug from the top, up from the bottom, and you're going to pull that snug. Now you're going to pick up the last 4 beads in the last row. You're going to go underneath the second bridge, and you're going to go up from the bottom to the top into the 2 beads on the left, pulling your thread snug, down from the top to the bottom in the 2 beads on the right, pulling your thread snug, and then up from the bottom to the top in the 2 beads on the left, pulling your thread snug. What we're going to do now is called a knotless tie-off. So you're going to go down from the top to the bottom into the 2 beads on the right, and then you're going to keep going down into the next row in the beads in the middle. So you keep going down into the 2 beads in the next row. Oops, I dropped my needle here. So down into the 2 beads of the next row underneath, and then you're going to pull that thread snug, and then you're going to go down one more row after that. So you're going to pick the beads either on the left or right. I had to use my pliers here because my beads were a little finicky, but yours should be fine. So then after that, you're going to go down one more row from that row. So we're going down one more row. Again, I had to use my pliers here. I'm using a slightly different kind of bead than the seed beads. I'm actually using Charlotte cut beads, and they're a little bit smaller, so I was having a bit of a hard time. So now you're going to go up from the bottom to the top of the 2 beads to either the left or right, whichever way you went and you have some space. You're going to go on the left or right, and then you're going to go down from the top to the bottom of those beads to either the left or the right of the 2 beads you just went up. You're going to pull that thread snug, and then we are going to cut that thread as close to the beads as you possibly can. Don't worry if there's a tiny little tail left. We're going to burn that off later. Now going to start on the fringe part. So you're going to take about 1 arm's length of this thread and cut that off. And you're going to thread your needle again. You're not going to tie a knot in your thread. You're not doubling up your thread. You're only leaving a small little tail on the one side where your dominant hand is. And then we're going to start by doing a knotless tie in. So earlier we did a knotless tie off, now we're doing a knotless tie in. So we're doing it the exact same way. You just want to make sure that when you're at the edge, you want to make sure that your needle is facing downwards. So you're counting from the edge, you want your needle facing down. So here I started in the row that has 5 columns of beads. On the second column from the left, I went up from the bottom to the top, and then to the right, I went down from the top to the bottom, sorry. And then I'm going to go to the left, up from the bottom to the top, to the right, down from the top to the bottom, to the right, up from the bottom to the top, and then finally again to the right, down from the top to the bottom, and that should be on the edge of your project now. The next row and again down to the next row so that your needle and your thread are sticking out from the very bottom row on the right. And then here I'm just cutting off that small little tail from the knotless tie-in. I'm not cutting the little tail on the bottom row on the left, only that little tail from the knotless tie-in. Now I'm going to be picking up 20 blue beads. So 20 blue beads and stringing them all the way down to the end of the thread until they meet the brick stitch portion of the project. Now what you're going to do is you're going to move that very last bead away from the rest of the string, and you're going to thread your needle up the rest of those other 19 beads until you meet the very first row of brick stitch. First row of brick stitch, you're going to thread your needle through those 2 beads on the edge of the brick stitch, and you're going to pull your needle all the way through. I had to use my pliers again, holding that last bead that we didn't go through again for the fringe, pulling your thread with your left hand and holding that bead with my right hand here. You can see that the thread is getting smaller and smaller, and here we have the very first fringe is just about done. Now we're going to go, see I'm holding my project upside down, I'm going to go top to the bottom, but in this video it looks like from the bottom to the top, but it's actually the top to the bottom of the next row, the next column of beads in that very first row. Again, we're only working with the very first row of brick stitch, and then you're going to repeat that process. So 20 beads, pull out the last one and go back up. You're going to repeat this process for each color, 20 beads, leave out the last bead at the end, go back up all your beads through the 2 first beads in the first row of brick stitch. Then you're going to come back down the next column and repeat. So then you just finished blue one, now we're going to go gold, 20 beads, hold the last bead, go back up your other 19 beads in the column of brick stitch, and then again with the white, again with the gold, and then the last 2 blue. Once you've done all of your fringes, you're going to do another knotless tie off. So you're going to go up the next row of beads, up again, and then you're going to go down through the column beside it, up through the column beside it, down through the column beside it, and once your needle is facing down towards your fringes, you can cut it off and burn it, and now you're done. The final step in making our earrings is adding on the hook. So for this part, we're going to need needle nose pliers and the hooks. The hooks were included in the kits. The needle nose pliers were not. Those can be picked up at any hardware store for relatively inexpensive, or you may already have some at home. So to start, you're going to open up the hook, as I did show you in this video, to the side, and you're going to add the hook in between the top 2 beads. Sorry, I had to put my hands over, it just wasn't working. So in between the top 2 beads, and just like that. And then all you're going to do now is close the hook back up the opposite way that you opened it. So you're going to take your pliers, grab the little piece of metal, and pull it back towards the closing end of it. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. If you could like and subscribe to my channel, I would super duper appreciate it. If you have any comments, please let me know. Thank you.